My son Jason canceled on my surgery again. This time, he said his wife's book club retreat in Banff couldn't be rescheduled. I was 63 years old, sitting in my kitchen in North Vancouver, holding the phone against my ear while my hands shook. The mastectomy was scheduled for Thursday morning. I'd asked him 3 months ago to drive me to and from the hospital. He'd said yes immediately, promised he'd be there, told me not to worry. That was before Stephanie decided her book club needed a wellness weekend at some mountain resort. I didn't argue. I'd stopped arguing 2 years ago when I realized it never changed anything. I just said okay, told him to have a good time, and hung up. Then I sat there, staring at the rain against my window, wondering when exactly I'd become so easy to disappoint. This wasn't the first time. When I had my hip replacement 18 months ago, Jason canceled the day before because Stephanie's mother needed help moving furniture. When I had that cardiac episode and spent 3 days in Lionsgate Hospital last spring, he visited once, stayed 20 minutes, checked his phone the entire time. When I asked if he could come back the next day, he said Stephanie had already made plans for them to go wine tasting in the Okanagan. I'm not sure when my son married someone who saw me as an inconvenience or when he decided that was acceptable, but somewhere along the way, I became the thing you deal with after everything else is handled. The obligation you fulfill when there's nothing better to do. I called the hospital that afternoon and explained I didn't have anyone to pick me up after surgery. The nurse said I'd need to hire a private care service. She gave me a number. I wrote it down carefully, my handwriting shakier than I wanted it to be. The woman who answered was kind. Her name was Margaret. She said this happened more often than people realized, that I shouldn't feel bad about needing help. I wanted to tell her I didn't feel bad about needing help. I felt bad about who I'd apparently raised. But I didn't say that. I just booked her services for Thursday morning through Friday evening, gave her my credit card information, and thanked her for being professional. Jason texted me that night. "Sorry again about Thursday, Mom. Stephanie really needs this trip. She's been so stressed." I read it 3 times. I didn't respond. The surgery went fine. Margaret picked me up, drove me home, stayed the first night to make sure I didn't have complications. She was a grandmother herself, showed me pictures of her grandkids on her phone while I drifted in and out from the anesthesia. She made soup. She didn't check her phone every 5 minutes. She didn't act like being there was a burden. On Friday, she helped me shower and change the dressings. Before she left, she held my hand and said, "You're going to be just fine, Dorothy. You're stronger than you think." I believed her. Not because of the surgery, but because I'd just gotten through the worst of it without my son, and somehow that felt less painful than all the times I'd waited for him to show up. Jason called Saturday morning. I let it go to voicemail. He called again Sunday. I didn't answer. By Monday, Stephanie was calling too. I deleted their messages without listening. It wasn't revenge, it was exhaustion. I was tired of shrinking myself to fit into whatever space they decided to leave for me. Tired of acting grateful when they showed up late. Tired of pretending it didn't hurt when they chose literally anything else over their mother. So I stopped. I didn't announce it. I didn't send an angry text or leave a voicemail explaining my feelings. I just stopped participating in the fantasy that I mattered to them. The first month was strange. I kept expecting to feel guilty. Instead, I felt lighter. I started going to a cancer support group at the community center on Tuesday evenings. Everyone there understood what it meant to suddenly see your life differently, to realize that the people you thought would show up sometimes just don't. There was a man in the group named Edward. He'd beaten colon cancer 2 years ago, lost his wife to lung cancer 5 years before that. He had kind eyes and terrible jokes, and every week he brought homemade butter tarts that were genuinely the best I'd ever tasted. We started having coffee after the meetings, just talking. He told me about his late wife, about his daughter who lived in Toronto and called every Sunday like clockwork, about how he'd learned to cook because grief made him want to do something with his hands. I told him about my own husband who died 8 years ago, about Jason and Stephanie, about how strange it was to feel lonely in a relationship with your own child. Edward didn't offer advice, he just listened, and somehow that was exactly what I needed. By November, we were having dinner once a week. By December, we were exchanging gifts at Christmas, small things that showed we'd been paying attention. He gave me a book on West Coast gardening because I'd mentioned wanting to redo my backyard. I gave him a vintage vinyl record player because he'd said he missed listening to his old jazz albums. Jason texted me on Christmas morning. "Merry Christmas, Mom. Hope you're doing well." I didn't respond. In January, Edward and I took a pottery class together. In February, we drove out to Tofino for a weekend and walked along Long Beach in the rain, not caring that we were soaked. In March, he told me he'd been thinking about asking me something but wanted to make sure it wasn't too soon. I told him I'd spent 2 years watching my son cancel on me for book clubs and furniture moves. I didn't believe in too soon anymore. I believed in not wasting the time you had left. He asked me to marry him in April, in his backyard in West Vancouver, with cherry blossoms falling around us like snow. I said yes before he'd even finished the sentence. We planned a small wedding for June. Just us, his daughter flying in from Toronto, a few friends from our support group. We rented a private room at a waterfront restaurant in Horseshoe Bay, arranged for a celebrant, kept everything intimate and simple. I didn't tell Jason. I thought about it exactly once, while addressing the invitations. Then I thought about all those times I'd called him, texted him, asked him to show up, and he'd chosen Stephanie's book club, her mother's furniture, their wine-tasting trips. I addressed the invitation to Edward's daughter instead. The wedding was perfect, small and genuine, and filled with people who'd chosen to be there. Edward's daughter, Rachel, gave a toast that made me cry, talking about how her father had spent 5 years in gray silence after her mother died, and how seeing him happy again felt like watching someone remember how to breathe. We took photos, lots of them. Rachel posted several on Facebook, tagging both Edward and me. We looked happy because we were. 63 and 67, holding hands by the water, getting a second chance at something we'd both thought was over. Jason called while we were at dinner. I didn't hear it. My phone was on silent in my purse. He called again the next morning. Then 3 more times that afternoon. Then Stephanie called. Then Stephanie's mother called, which was bold considering I'd met the woman twice in 7 years. I finally answered on Sunday evening. Jason's voice was tight with anger. "Mom, what the hell?" I didn't say anything. Stephanie's mom sent her a link to Facebook. "You got married?" "Yes," I said. "And you didn't tell me?" "No," I said. "Why not?" I looked out my window at the harbor. A seaplane was taking off, rising into the evening light. "Because you've made it very clear over the last few years that unless something is convenient for you, you're not interested in showing up. So I stopped asking you to." "That's not fair," he said. "I've been busy. Stephanie's had a lot going on. Her mother needed help. We've had our own stuff to deal with." "I had cancer," I said quietly. Silence. "I had cancer, Jason. I had surgery to remove part of my body. I asked you 3 months in advance to drive me to the hospital. You canceled because Stephanie wanted to go to a book club retreat. She needed that trip," he started. "And I needed my son," I said. "But you weren't there. You haven't been there. Not for the surgery, not for the recovery, not when I was in the hospital last year, not for anything that required you to prioritize me over whatever Stephanie wanted to do that week. So you got married without telling me? That's your solution? Just cut me out?" "I didn't cut you out," I said. "You were never really in. I just stopped pretending otherwise." He made a sound that might have been anger or hurt. I couldn't tell anymore. Maybe there wasn't a difference. "This is about Stephanie, isn't it?" he said. "You've never liked her." "This is about you," I said. "About who you chose to become when you married her. About the fact that you don't call unless you need something. You don't visit unless it fits your schedule. You don't show up unless there's nothing else happening. And I'm tired, Jason. I'm tired of being the person you remember to care about when it's convenient. I can't believe you got married and didn't invite your own son." Stephanie's voice came through the phone. She'd been listening the whole time. I almost laughed. "Stephanie, in the 7 years you've been with my son, you've canceled on me 16 times. Birthdays, holidays, regular dinners, always for something more important. Your mother, your book club, your yoga retreat, your girls' weekend." I kept track for a while, then I stopped because it was depressing. "So, no. I didn't invite you to my wedding. because you've made it abundantly clear that my life is not important to you." "That's not true," she said, but her voice was uncertain. "It is true," I said. "And it's fine. You don't have to care about your husband's mother, but don't act surprised when she stops waiting for you to pretend you do." Jason got back on the phone. "So what now? You're just done with us?" "I'm done waiting for you to care," I said. "I'm done rearranging my expectations so they're small enough for you to meet them. I'm done feeling grateful when you show basic decency. If you want to be part of my life, you know where I am. But I'm not going to beg you anymore." I hung up before he could respond. Edward found me standing in the kitchen, staring at nothing. He didn't ask what happened. He just made tea and sat with me until the shaking in my hands stopped. "Did I do the right thing?" I asked him. "Do you feel lighter or heavier?" he said. I thought about it. "Lighter." "Then yes," he said. Jason didn't call back that week, or the next week. By the third week, I stopped checking my phone every morning to see if he had. Edward and I went to Whistler for a few days. We hiked the easier trails, had dinner at a nice restaurant, slept in without setting alarms. Rachel came to visit for a long weekend in August. She brought her partner, a woman named Sarah, who worked in publishing. We all got along beautifully. They treated me like I'd always been part of the family, not like I was an addition that needed adjusting to. In September, Jason sent a text. "Can we talk?" I didn't respond for 3 days. When I finally did, I said, "If you want to talk, you can come to my house." Wednesday at 2. He showed up alone, which was something. He looked tired, older than 38. He sat on my couch and didn't say anything for almost a minute. "Stephanie and I have been fighting," he finally said. I waited. "She doesn't understand why I'm upset. She keeps saying you overreacted, that you're being dramatic, that you cut us out over one missed appointment." "It wasn't one appointment," I said. "I know," he rubbed his face. "I know, Mom. I've been going through old texts, old calls, looking at the last few years, and you're right, I haven't been there. I kept thinking I'd make it up to you later, that you'd understand because you're my mom. That's what moms do." "Moms get tired too," I said. "Yeah." His voice cracked slightly. "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I don't know when I became this person. I don't know when I started treating you like you'd always be there no matter what I did." "When Stephanie made it easy to," I said quietly. He looked at me. "She doesn't mean to be cruel. She just doesn't think about anyone outside her immediate circle, her mom, her friends, her plans." And I went along with it because it was easier than arguing. "And I was outside the circle," I said. "Yeah." He looked at his hands. "You were. And I let you be." "I'm so sorry, Mom." I didn't cry. I'd done enough crying over the last 2 years. But I felt something shift inside me, something that had been knotted tight starting to loosen. "I don't know if I can fix this," he said. "I don't know if you even want me to try." "I don't know either," I said honestly. "But I know I can't go back to how it was. I can't be the person you remember when it's convenient. I can't keep making myself smaller so you don't have to feel guilty." "I don't want you to," he said. "I want to do better. I want to actually show up. I don't know if Stephanie will understand that. She's already angry that I'm here. She thinks you're manipulating me." "I'm not manipulating you," I said. "I'm just not chasing you anymore." He nodded slowly. "Can I ask you something? The guy you married, Edward, are you happy?" "Yes," I said. "Very. Good." He stood up. "That's good, Mom. You deserve that." He left after that. I watched him walk to his car, watched him sit in the driver's seat for several minutes before starting the engine. Edward came home an hour later with groceries and Thai takeout. He didn't ask how it went. He just kissed my forehead and started unpacking the food. "He apologized," I said. "That's something," Edward said. "I don't know if it changes anything. It doesn't have to. Not right away." I helped him plate the food. We ate dinner watching the sun set over the harbor, not talking about Jason or Stephanie or weddings or disappointment, just being together in the quiet. Jason started calling more regularly after that. Once a week, then twice. Short calls, nothing deep, just checking in. He came by one Saturday to help Edward fix a leak in our basement. Stephanie wasn't with him. He didn't mention her much. In October, he asked if he could take me to lunch for my birthday. Just the two of us. I said yes, but I didn't cancel my existing plans with Edward. We made it a separate thing, the day before. He took me to a restaurant I'd mentioned months ago, one he'd actually remembered. We had a decent time. He asked about my recovery, about Edward's daughter, about the pottery class. He listened without checking his phone. At the end, he said, "I know I can't undo the last few years, but I want to try to be better, if you'll let me." "I will," I said, "but slowly, and only if you actually mean it." "I do," he said. I wanted to believe him. Part of me did. The rest of me was just tired enough to know that belief required proof over time, not promises made over lunch. Edward and I hosted Thanksgiving that year. Rachel and Sarah flew in from Toronto. Edward's brother came from Victoria with his husband. I invited Jason. Just Jason. He came. He brought wine and helped set the table and talked to everyone like he genuinely wanted to be there. Stephanie called him 3 times during dinner. He let them all go to voicemail. After everyone left, while Edward and I were cleaning up, he said, "Your son's trying." "I know," I said. "That's worth something." "Maybe," I said. "We'll see." By December, Jason and Stephanie had separated. He didn't tell me until it was already done, just showed up one evening and said he'd moved into an apartment in Burnaby, that they'd been going to counseling but couldn't fix what was fundamentally broken. I didn't ask for details. It wasn't my business. But I could see relief in his face, underneath the exhaustion and grief of ending a 7-year relationship. "I'm sorry," I said, "because I was." "I'm not," he said. "Not really. I just wish I'd seen it sooner." "Sometimes we can't see things until we're ready," I said. He stayed for dinner that night. Edward made his famous butter tarts. Jason ate 3 and asked for the recipe. They talked about hockey and house repairs and whether the Canucks had any chance this season. Normal things, easy things. When Jason was leaving, he hugged me at the door. A real hug, not the quick side squeeze he'd been doing for years. "I love you, Mom," he said. "I love you too," I said. And I meant it. But I also knew that love didn't mean accepting breadcrumbs. It didn't mean erasing boundaries or pretending hurt hadn't happened. It meant giving him the chance to do better while protecting the peace I'd found. Because here's what I learned in those months after my surgery, after my wedding, after I finally stopped waiting for my son to show up. You can love someone and still refuse to disappear for them. You can want a relationship while refusing to accept one that diminishes you. You can hope for change while building a life that doesn't depend on it. I spent years believing that being a good mother meant being endlessly available, endlessly forgiving, endlessly willing to accept whatever my son chose to give me. I thought boundaries were selfish. I thought expectations were demanding. I thought if I just loved him enough, he'd eventually prioritize me. But love isn't supposed to make you invisible. It's not supposed to require you to erase your needs so someone else never has to feel inconvenienced. And at 63 years old, with cancer behind me and a second marriage in front of me, I finally understood that. I didn't cut Jason out of my life as punishment. I stepped back as self-preservation, and in that space, I found Edward, I found Rachel, and Sarah. I found Tuesday night support groups and pottery classes and weekends in Tofino. I found a version of myself that didn't measure her worth by whether her son remembered to call. Jason is trying now. Maybe he'll keep trying. Maybe the divorce will shake him into a different version of himself, one who understands that relationships require actual presence, not just proximity. Maybe we'll rebuild something real. Or maybe we won't. Maybe he'll slip back into old patterns. Maybe he'll find someone new who makes it easy to forget about me again. But either way, I'll be fine. Because I'm not waiting anymore. I'm not hoping for scraps of attention or making excuses for why I don't matter. I'm living my life with people who choose to be in it, who show up without being begged, who treat my time and presence as the gift it is. If you're reading this and you see yourself in my story, if you're the person who keeps calling, keeps trying, keeps shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that don't want you, I need you to hear this. It's okay to stop. It's okay to say, I've done enough. It's okay to build a life that doesn't revolve around earning someone's bare minimum effort. You are not selfish for having boundaries. You are not cruel for refusing to accept neglect. You are not demanding for wanting to be treated like you matter. And if someone can't show up for you when you're facing surgery, when you're celebrating milestones, when you need them, that's information. That's them showing you who they are. Believe them. And then decide what you're willing to accept. I chose to stop accepting it. I chose my own peace over my son's convenience. And yes, it hurt. It still hurts sometimes. But it hurts less than spending another year wondering why I'm never enough of a priority to be chosen. I'm 64 now. Edward is 68. We garden together. We travel. We host dinners. We have quiet mornings with coffee and loud evenings with laughter. We've built something beautiful out of the wreckage of our previous lives. Jason comes around more now. We're finding a new rhythm, a healthier distance. Maybe someday we'll be close again. Maybe we won't. But I'm not basing my happiness on that maybe anymore. Because the best thing I ever did was stop waiting for someone who wasn't coming and start living for the people who already had.